Mr. President, Latvia is one of 34 countries that have issued a joint statement condemning the ongoing attacks against UN peacekeepers in Lebanon. Your country also contributes troops to the UN peacekeeping mission there. How angry are you about those attacks?
Well, first of all, I think that we all understand that international law, the United Nations peacekeepers are deployed for certain specific mission, and that's normally to monitor and to ensure that there is peace. And while we are not denying the self-defense rights of Israel within the international law, specifically international humanitarian law, Latvia strongly believes that Israel should refrain from attacking the United Nations forces, the United Nations peacekeepers or observers. And that's why Latvia joined other countries condemning those attacks. We are also calling on Israel to stop it and to observe all the international law and obligations. And let's not forget that Israel is also part of the United Nations, and the United Nations Charter is mandatory also for this country.
And just more widely, as the conflict continues in the Middle East, are you concerned that the eyes of the world are focused there and perhaps less so on the war in Ukraine?
I think that we have a situation since October 7th last year when we have seen that actually you can't ignore one conflict and concentrate on another one. Not only, there is a war in Ukraine, and so that's a regional issue. No, that's a global issue. But also the situation in the Middle East is part of the global trend, and we should not somehow view those things from a kind of isolated perspective. We need to look at those two situations from the point of view that the global system is failing. The United Nations Security Council, unfortunately, is not able effectively enforce UN Charter, and that's why, from one point of view, yes, we see that attention is a little bit floating, but you have a Russian missile attack in Ukraine where a lot of civilians are killed, and then all of a sudden all eyes are back on Ukraine. You have the situation as we see in the Middle East, and all of a sudden we shift our attention. So I think that it's not the right approach, and we need to look at those issues in a balanced way.
If you say that the global system is failing, who do you think is to blame for that? Is there one country, one organization?
Well, I think that in the last UN General Assembly meeting we had last September, there were a growing number of countries calling for UN Security Council reform. What UN Security Council currently reflects is the reality of 1945. And my country has been always calling for the reform of UN Security Council. We need to broaden the number of permanent members, including those of Africa, those of Asia, those of Latin America. And another thing is that, unfortunately, veto rights of permanent members are unrestricted. But we see that when one or another permanent member of the United Nations Security Council puts a veto where the humanitarian tragedy is unfolding, or where one permanent member is part of the aggression, like Russia against Ukraine, then the whole system is stalling, and the confidence into the United Nations is falling.
How would you describe the situation in the Ukraine war right now? There's people talking about stalemate on the battlefield, about fatigue among all parties. And what is the threat as you see it from Latvian perspective?
Precisely what you've said, fatigue. I think that we should not think that if we start ignoring the war, that it's going to end. I do believe that indeed there is a very difficult winter approaching for Ukraine. Its energy infrastructure is being targeted by Russia. And yes, one can agree that the situation on the battlefield is rather difficult, but I also believe that we are going to see any movement only after the US elections, after the clarity of US political 4 years period from November on. But my call would be continue supporting Ukraine with all means at our disposal, political, financial, also military. Second, yes, unfortunately part of this stalemate, as you said, is because there are restrictions on the use of Western weapons in Ukraine, by Ukraine against Russian legitimate military targets. And indeed, I think that this kind of situation we are in will be resolved only if the Western countries, those countries that are supporting international law and Ukraine in particular, will somehow mobilize more support. So there is no time and place for fatigue. Otherwise, we are going to see enormous negative consequences to regional and global security.
I want to know about the specific threat to Latvia. Your country has got plans to build something, along with other countries, something called the Baltic Defence Line, and it's a network of bunkers and barriers and military infrastructure. Now, history is littered with examples of barriers that countries have tried to erect to stop invasions, and they haven't worked. Do you think that this plan will keep your country safe from Russia?
Well, we are in the 21st century, and I would say that it's not exactly like Maginot Line we know from the history or other examples. What we have seen actually in our very recent turn of events is that we need to strengthen, first of all, air defense system. Because we had an accident some months ago when Russian-produced Shahed-type drone crashed in Latvia. It was not directed against Latvia. It veered off the course from Ukraine, but it was able to fly.
A lot of countries are saying there is a right to shoot down such drones if they threaten European territory, even if they're still in Ukrainian airspace. What is Latvia's view?
I think that if we see that drone or missile actually endangers NATO member states, and you see that there is a way how to shoot down or to tackle this issue, then we must do that. Because your example of the drone that actually crashed in the territory of Latvia, that was a drone with 50 kilograms of explosives. So imagine the situation if it would crash on small village or town in the eastern part of Latvia, and they would be casualties.
Do you actually want Patriots or some other air defense systems permanently stationed in your country?
Well, I don't believe you can use Patriot systems against drones. That would be
okay, but other systems like.
But what we need, yes, we need more air defense, both national and also provided by NATO allies. So more radar coverage, more different kinds of air defense systems, not only Patriots who are very efficient against ballistic missiles, against very serious threats, but also those who can engage low-flying drones or other entities. And I think that Ukraine and also our current experience teaches us to have more mobilization at the national level, but also more clarity at NATO level.
Latvia shares a border with Russia, also with Belarus, and along those borders, particularly the one with Belarus, you're seeing this particular problem of illegal border crossings. And the allegation is that the Belarus government is promoting deliberately and encouraging those type of illegal crossing attempts in order to destabilize Latvia and other European countries. What do you think is the right response? Prime Minister Donald Tusk in Poland has said that the right of asylum could be suspended. Do you think that's the right approach?
Well, what we have been calling since summer 2021 is the need to reform the whole asylum system. Because what we are seeing is that Belarus is using migration as the weapon against Latvia, Lithuania and Poland. But let's not fool ourselves. It's not about destabilization of Latvia. because those people are not remaining in Latvia. They don't dream about staying in Latvia or Lithuania or Poland. They look at Germany, they look at Sweden, they look at countries with, let's say, more advanced social support system for migrants. And I think that Belarus is exploring those weaknesses we have as the European Union, not reformed migration and asylum system, in a way that they keep forcing people to cross Latvian border, Polish border or Lithuanian border in order to change our stance when it comes to sanctions against Belarus that were imposed because of the human rights violations.
So what about the right to asylum? Is there a danger that that some genuine asylum seekers might be pushed back if you toughen even further?
In a way, how the situation develops on the eastern border of Latvia, I would say that it is highly unlikely that there are genuine asylum seekers. Why? Because, again, the information we are getting from different sources, including those migrants that have passed the border, and yes, if we see that there is health issues or there are families with small children, they are granted the right to consider their asylum appeal. But look, those people are paying quite a substantial money. We have seen that Belarus is organizing flow of people from countries like countries in the North Africa, in the Middle East. And normally there is also currently organized crime network involved. We are also arresting citizens of different nationalities, from Latvians to Ukrainians to Poles to Belarus citizens who are part of this kind of network. So I would say that if we don't strengthen the legislation, if we don't strengthen the border, then actually we are going to see that problems with migration being used as the hybrid weapon will increase.
Finally, let me just ask you about what the region, Latvia in particular, looks like after this war. People suggest that Russia's armed forces will be so battered that they wouldn't be able to take on another war, but still, again and again, we hear the fears that Putin or whoever might attempt to land grab in the Baltic states, including Latvia. Is that a fear that you share?
Look, I think that we should not have any illusions about the coming decades of Russia. I think that this country currently is experiencing enormous mixture of some kind of grief of the loss of the former empire, some kind of very belligerent, not only rhetoric, but also society, and we must be vigilant. I wouldn't say that I'm fearful of something. If we are investing in our defense, if NATO and European Union is investing in defense, if we take those threats that we are hearing seriously, and if Russia sees our strengths, it's not going to attack neither Latvia nor any NATO or EU country. But if we are going to be complacent, seeing that if there is a kind of political process that involves either the ceasefire or the peace deal with Ukraine, and we give Russia time and space to recover from the current military operation, to regroup, to mobilize its economy, to mobilize its army, to learn from mistakes, then it's going to be a danger not only for Latvia, it's going to be a danger for all of us. So stay vigilant, don't panic, be prepared for everything, and work for all kinds of scenarios, and then we are going to be safe.
Mr. President, thank you very much.
Thank you.